Trey, we are rocking with number 20 Arizona and number 14 Kansas State as our game of the week. The Kansas State Wildcats, 7.5-point favorite, 7 p.m. Fox. This is a Friday night game, so maybe get your date night in on Thursday night. Maybe if
I
your
don't
team
know,
plays.
man. My date night this week is watching Texas State, Arizona State. My wife is fired up about that game.
And yeah, you guys did talk about that on the Leftovers episode this past Monday. I thought it was a great breakdown. I'm also very excited to watch this game. But listen, if you're looking for an opportunity, I would say maybe Thursday night, maybe catch the second half of that one, maybe Saturday if your team's already played, but Friday, you need to be locked in on some college football. Where do you want to start breaking this one down? Because I think both teams have one thing that they're really good at, and maybe some questions on the other end of the ball. Which of these Wildcat teams jumps out to you?
Well, I'll start with my pick. I'm going to go Arizona plus the points here. It's 7.5-point spread as we record here on Wednesday night. There's just going to be too many offensive explosive plays, I think, by both teams for me to think that Kansas State is going to cover a 7.5-point spread. Anytime I'm expecting a lot of points, I like to lean into the underdog. That's one of the rules I live by.
Sure.
Hasn't betrayed me too often. But, man, just watching Kansas State, I think the storyline for me, after watching them last week pretty closely against Tulane, they really struggled to stop the chunk plays through the air. And now you have Tetairoa McMillan coming into town. That's going to be the story for me. I don't think they can really hope to stop Tetairoa McMillan, maybe try to contain him, but really, he's going to get his in this game. And so what does Kansas State do to try to scheme that away? What does Kansas State do to try to take away all the other options and say, okay, Tetairoa going to get his? Or do they decide that he's not going to beat them and they just blanket him and make someone else beat them? That's going to be a fascinating backstory, fascinating chess match to watch for me. Both of these offenses have put up some really nice numbers. I know there's been a lot said about Avery Johnson so far. Hasn't really hit his stride as a passer. I think that he has a good opportunity this week against an Arizona secondary that has struggled through the first 2 weeks of the year. So I'm expecting a ton of points, to put it simply. And that means I'm going to take the underdog plus 7.5.
Yeah, I don't have the over-under written down on my run sheet. Maybe you can pull that up. But I'm also
60.5 is the current over.
60.5?
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like that could very easily go over, especially on a Friday night. And I think I'm going to lean into Arizona plus the points as well. I think Kansas State does find a way to win this one close, just like they did against Tulane. Here's the thing. You've got an Arizona offense that is a whole bunch of fun, right? Noah Fifita, T-Mac, as you mentioned, they've been really good this season, but Arizona is also running the ball very well. In just the first 2 weeks, they're averaging, 297 yards through the air. They're also putting up big yards on the ground. For Kansas State, that defense, as we highlighted after the Tulane game, they are giving up chunk plays at an alarming rate. Tulane was able to move the ball down the field, kind of one big play after the other, whether it was a seam route to Mario Williams or dumping it off to Mekhi Hughes or somebody underneath. Kansas State oftentimes was not in position to make kind of routine plays, hold Tulane to 3-4 yards of play, get off the field on third down. Instead, what really turned the tide in that game was a scoop and score. The pressure that they got on Darian Mensah and ultimately taking that ball to the house. And then, late in the game, a questionable penalty goes against the Tulane offense. It kind of ruins all of their momentum when it feels like Tulane's about to tie that up. Anyway, that's a different podcast for a different time. What I'm concerned about on Arizona's side, though, is their defense. You mentioned that Avery Johnson has not gotten going at kind of that high octane level that I think we're anticipating him getting to. I mean, when Wally pipped Will Howard last year, he rushed the ball into the end zone 5 times in that game. So we know that Avery can really get it going. The problem is they haven't really uncorked him as a passer this season. It's felt like he's been a little bit timid to run the ball with his legs, but this might be the week for Kansas State to get that going. Arizona is one of the worst teams in the country at defending the run. And most importantly, they're one of the worst teams at giving up yards before contact in the country. Again, only 2 weeks, but that's one of the most startling stats that I heard while I was doing my research this week, prepping for this game. Arizona's defensive line is getting blown off the ball. And when you have a rushing attack like Kansas State can bring with DJ Giddens, with Dylan Edwards, and then you've got your quarterback who wants to get loose with his legs as well, I'm really concerned about Arizona's ability to win this game. I think they're going to have to rely on those chunk plays in order to stay up with Kansas State, but it feels a little bit like a recipe from last week where Kansas State maybe is losing part of this game, but they end up sealing the deal this time at home over Arizona.
Yeah, it's going to be a fascinating contrast of styles, right? You mentioned it. I think Kansas State is going to want to run the ball quite a bit, test that Arizona State defensive line, test that front seven. And I mean, I think this could be an interesting coming out party opportunity for Avery Johnson too. I haven't been super impressed with the Arizona secondary. There's a lot of depth issues across the whole defense. But then on the other side of the ball, they have the ultimate trump card of the big chunk plays, right? So this is going to be a fascinating game. Really excited. It's in a pretty much standalone window. I can't remember if there's UNLV Kansas also that starts an hour before this one.
It's going to be fun.
Could be a fun game as well, but pretty much a standalone window to watch both of those games. I'm really excited I get to put a lot of attention on it. How about the Sunflower State just taking over Friday night this week?
Hey, we love it. Absolutely love it. I'm all in. Like I said, I'm going to be locked in on Friday night. So this will be a really fun evening to watch college football.
Gracious him! How about that?